Hello and welcome to Dining with Death. This episode is on our playlist, Dining with the Damned, where we discuss criminals sentenced to die, their crimes, their executions, and their last meal requests. I'm Stacey Lee. Let's begin. Charles Raymond Charlie Starkweather was born on November 24th, 1938 in Lincoln, Nebraska. He was the third of 7 children born to Guy and Helen Starkweather, a working class family. His father worked as a carpenter and his mother worked as a waitress. And Charles attended Saratoga Elementary, Irving Junior High, and Lincoln High School. He had a speech impediment and a mild birth defect that caused his legs to be misshapen. Both of these conditions resulted in him being teased relentlessly by classmates. As he grew, he excelled in gym class and sports, and soon the bullied became the bully. Starkweather reported to a school counselor feeling rage at almost everyone, and soon went from a well-behaved teenager to what was then one of the community's most troubled. A close friend told a reporter, quote, "He could be the kindest person you've ever seen. He'd do anything for you if he liked you. He was a hell of a lot of fun to be around too. Everything was just one big joke to him. But he had this other side. He could be mean as hell, cruel. If he saw some poor guy on the street who was bigger than he was, better looking or better dressed, he'd try to take that poor bastard down to his size." This guy had issues. We don't have time to go into all of the reports from neighbors and family friends and the school, but he was a very angry person. And I get it, he was bullied and maybe not given the best lot in life, but I mean, we all have choices and we all can decide how we want to handle things that aren't fair, and just wait, he didn't do so well with that. In 1956, when he was 18, Starkweather met 13-year-old Caril and Fugate through Caril's older sister, who he had previously dated. He dropped out of high school and took a job at a Western Union newspaper warehouse because it was near Caril's junior high school. He began visiting her every day after school, and he actually taught her to drive. And one day while they were driving, he crashed his father's car. This resulted in Charles being banned from the Starkweather home. So he quit his job at the warehouse and began to work as a garbage collector because he had gotten into an argument with his boss at the warehouse. While he was on his garbage route, he would daydream and plot bank robberies, and he told several people that his personal philosophy was, "Dead people are all on the same level." In my area, we call this small man syndrome, and it doesn't necessarily have to refer to someone's stature, but someone who just seems to feel really small. And while that's sad, that's nobody else's fault, and you certainly don't have the right to do what this guy did. On November 30th, 1957, Starkweather had an altercation with Robert Culvert, a gas station attendant, who refused to sell him a stuffed animal on credit. Starkweather went to the store several times, and on the last visit, he pulled out a gun and forced Culvert to give him $100 out of the till. He then kidnapped Culvert and drove him to a remote area. Culvert fought to get the gun away from Starkweather but was unsuccessful. And Starkweather then shot Culvert in the head, killing him instantly. A few months later, on January 21st, 1958, Starkweather went to Caril and Fugate's home to pick up his girlfriend. Her mother and stepfather told him to stay away. This is an 18-year-old with a 13-year-old. A 13-year-old is a child. Look how small she is in this photo. This is a very young girl. Definitely not someone who should be dated by an 18-year-old. I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel. When Caril's parents told Starkweather he wasn't welcome at the home anymore, he flew into a rage and shot both of them dead. He then stabbed their 2-year-old daughter, Betty Jean, to death. He hid all 3 bodies behind the house. That's a whole other level of insanity. You're gonna kill these parents and kill a baby. I'm sorry, but there is nothing lower than that. There is nothing worse than that in the whole world. When Caril came home from school, Starkweather told her that her family had been taken hostage. Now, there are a lot of different events depending on whether the story is coming from Caril or Starkweather. But basically, they ended up staying in the home for a week, never leaving, watching TV, cooking, and having sex. On January 27th, Caril's grandmother alerted the police that the family was missing. And somehow Starkweather and Fugate knew the police were headed to the house and they fled. They drove to the farmhouse of 70-year-old August Meyer, a family friend of Caril's. Starkweather shot him in the head and also killed his dog. The pair stole Meyer's car, but soon after fleeing, they drove it into the mud and it was stuck. They had to leave it there. Two local teenagers, Robert Jensen and Caril King, happened upon the stranded pair and stopped to ask Starkweather and Fugate if they needed a ride. When they did this kind act, Starkweather forced them into the car at gunpoint and drove them to an abandoned storm cellar in Bennett, Nebraska. He shot Jensen in the back of the head and attempted to rape King, but was unable to do so. So, of course, he became angry at her and also shot her in the back of the head, killing her as well. Fugate claims she stayed in the car throughout this event, but who knows? The pair then fled Bennett in Jensen's car. They drove to a wealthy area in Lincoln, Nebraska, where they entered the home of C. Lauer Ward and his wife, Clara. Starkweather stabbed their maid, Lillian Fenchy, to death and then waited for the owners of the home to return. He killed the family's dog by breaking its neck. So this guy definitely, those of us that are into these kinds of things, these people have a real tendency to be cruel to animals. It's a thread that runs through a lot of these stories. So always something to watch out for. With the dog dead, the homeowners would not be alerted to someone being in the house when they got there. Clara arrived first and was stabbed to death. Starkweather later insisted that Caril did the stabbing. When Lauer returned to his home later that evening, Starkweather shot and killed him. Starkweather and Fugate then filled Ward's black 1956 Packard with stolen jewelry from the house and fled Nebraska. Ruthless. Ruthless is the word that comes to mind. And I'm on the fence about Caril. Yes, she was 13. How involved in this was she? I don't think we'll ever know. The murder of the wealthy couple caused an uproar, and the governor ordered a house-by-house search for the murderers. The couple caught wind of the search and knew that they had to dump the black Packard as it had been reported stolen. The couple came upon traveling salesman Merle Collison sleeping in his Buick alongside the highway in Douglas, Wyoming. Collison was shot in the face and killed. Starkweather obviously did this to get his car, but then he struggled with the parking brake, which was a new feature in automobiles, newer automobiles that Starkweather wasn't familiar with. And so he kept stalling the car as he was trying to work this new feature. A passing motorist, Joe Sprinkle, stopped to help. Starkweather threatened him with a weapon, and the two men began to fight over the gun. At just that moment, luckily, National County Sheriff's Deputy William Romer arrived on the scene, and Caril began shouting at the officer, "It's Starkweather, he's going to kill me." Starkweather then drove off and a police chase ensued. Speeds exceeded 100 miles an hour, but Starkweather finally pulled over and surrendered when police shot the windows out of the car and a piece of glass hit him, and he thought he'd been shot and was bleeding to death. Starkweather and Fugate were extradited back to Nebraska in late January 1958, and Fugate always maintained that Starkweather was holding her hostage and she had nothing to do with the killings. Starkweather continually tried to pin the blame on Fugate, but he was tried and convicted of the murder of teenager Robert Jensen, and he was sentenced to death in the electric chair. Fugate was convicted as an accomplice and received a life sentence, but she was paroled in June 1976 after serving 17 years. We've talked about this before. These old cases, sometimes people get a life sentence and they do 15 years, which I'm sure a lot of you watch true crime that comes out of Canada and Europe. That's very common there. But here in the US, life doesn't mean 17 years. Not anymore. Caril changed her name and settled in Lansing, Michigan, where she worked as a janitor for a Lansing hospital. She married Frederick Clare in 2007. And apart from one radio interview, she has always refused to speak of this incident. She was living in Ohio when both she and her husband were killed in a car crash on August 5th, 2013. Movies and songs have been written about the couple. The movies Badlands and Natural Born Killers are both inspired by these events. The 1982 title track of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska is a song written from Starkweather's point of view and details the events of the killing spree. On the date of the execution, Starkweather was offered a steak but refused and made another request for a last meal. Just past midnight on June 25, 1959, Charles Starkweather was escorted to the electric chair, strapped in, and electrocuted to death. He was 20 years old. So, what did spree killer Charles Starkweather request for his last meal? I'm going to show you. This is what Charles Starkweather requested for his last meal. A plate of cold cuts. He was offered a steak, like I said, but he asked for this. This would definitely not be my last meal. I'd like a cold cut, okay, but not for my last meal. So let's taste it. Pepperoni. That's my favorite. I got some hard salami. I tried to find olive loaf, which I personally love, but I couldn't find it in my town. I live in the West, and the reason I even know about olive loaf and love olive loaf so much is because I had a grandfather who is from Rochester, New York. And every Christmas Eve, he would order from the deli, special order, and they would have to get it from somewhere else because in little southern Utah, they didn't have things like that. They would special order my grandpa olive loaf and head cheese and things that he was used to eating from New York. And I remember just loving the olive loaf, and I still love it. I buy it whenever I can find it, but I couldn't find it. So this is salami. That's pretty good salami. I like the peppery quality. That's really good. And this is just honey ham. My kids loved this stuff growing up. Don't all kids love this? It's so weird. I haven't had that for a really long time. It's good. It makes me want to get like a piece of Kraft singles and wrap it up, and like, you know, when you were little. But kind of a strange meal, right? Like no cheese, no crackers. He just wanted cold cuts, just the meat. Well, I guess he got his last request, but I, for one, am happy he's gone. People like that scare me to death, and I don't think they should be living among us. Thank you for joining me today as we discussed the life, the crimes, and the execution of Charles Starkweather. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.